In our global world right now, there are just a multitude of challenges, and there's a tremendous urgency right now to meet those challenges as we move into the 21st century. So do you feel that the religious traditions can meet those challenges, or how do they have to change if they're going to meet those challenges?
I think we have to depend on the religious traditions because, as a populace, people across the world are not going to transform into a scientific perspective of spirituality immediately. In the short term, which means several decades and even possibly another 100 years, religions are going to be playing an important role. At the same time, I think we have to acknowledge that religions have been divisive and quarrelsome and frequently based on idiotic ideas, at least here and there. There's lots of idiotic ideas. If I had to believe everything in religion, I would have to deny all of evolution, biology, physics, astrophysics, Big Bang, etc. So, like everything else, our religions will have to evolve as we evolve and have to be consistent with our current map of what we think is reality. I mean, we're still going to have the same questions. Do I have a soul? What happens to me after I die? Does God exist? But I think our view of the spirit or God or reality has to expand. It's very ethnocentric, it's racist, very frequently bigoted and prejudiced, and in fact, if anything, diminishes the magnificence of what we call God.
Right. If you had to say what are those what are those elements of religious tradition that must change, that we're not going to make it unless these things change?
Well, if God is one, if God is infinite, if God is unbounded, eternal, if God is the source of all the information, energy, space-time and matter, if God is the potential for all that was, all that is, all that will be, then He can't be exclusively mine or exclusively yours. I think religions have to say and really confront the fact that we might have different rituals that bind us to the source, which is what religion means. Religio is to bind back to the source, that we're all actually doing exactly the same thing, and the most fundamental tenets of religion are still an experiential understanding of our inseparability, of our connection, of love, of compassion, of understanding. Religions have to be contextual in their understanding of world problems. The fact that we are now a global village, the fact that religions have to address problems like conflict resolution, they have to address the environment, ecology, they have to address economic disparities, they have to address social justice. If they don't do that, then they're not relevant.
When you look at the traditions now and you see the way they're evolving, do you think it's fast enough, or does it have to, are we gonna make it in time?
No, it's not fast enough. It's not fast enough. In fact, reading the news, it seems to be regressing. So I think it is our responsibility, for those of us who see that if any way we can contribute, is to actually create a critical mass of connectivity. We have the technology. I mean, that's what you're doing right now. Your magazine. But I think we have the technology to take media, news networks, information technologies, movies, entertainment, and bring them all together. And there are enough responsible, intelligent people today that if we don't do it, then we're not responsible. Because ultimately it'll take a critical mass of connectivity of people who feel responsible to bring about a shift. Even if it doesn't happen in our generation, it happens maybe 2 generations down the line. But if we can set the conditions for seeding these ideas in our collective psyche, they'll take form at some point or not. But what's the saying? If you want a new crop, you have to sow new seed.
Right. Well, in terms of a new crop, because many people are saying, or some people are saying at least, we need a whole new tradition. We need to be untied from the past or decoupled from the past.
The danger
do you think
with
we need
that,
some kind of new tradition, or do we need a new tradition to lead the edge? Or
I think a new tradition might evolve, but if we start saying we need a new tradition, then we have the same danger. We'll be classified as ideology and dogma and another religion, in a sense, and that'll antagonize people. I think a new tradition needs to evolve, which is more unifying, which is more global, which is consistent with our scientific worldview. But I don't think it has to have a prophet or a messiah or an institution built around it. You know, the moment you do that, you run the danger of doing what other people have done in the past.
If we move forward 25, 50 years, what do you see as the future of religion? Both in terms of how the religions that we have now are going to evolve and what might evolve in terms of a new
I think there should be much. I see the future as religions playing a lot of importance in community and nurturing their communities, but at the same time working together to address practical issues, you know, to create economic incentives for conflict resolution, to really participate in the healing of the environment, to recognize that as long as there are economic disparities in the world, there's going to be conflict, and the fundamental religions, not the fundamental religions, but the fundamentalists in every religion are going to take advantage of that. You know, when there is poverty, when there is fear, when there is ignorance, then that's when these conflicts thrive and fundamentalism starts to wreak havoc.
Right. If you look at religion now, or religious thought, or spiritual thought, and you see, okay, that is the emerging edge. That in 50 years, that's going to be mainstream. What do you see? What is the emerging edge?
I'm biased. The emerging edge for me is science. You know, the emerging edge for me is the understanding of non-locality. Okay. And for me, but that's my bias.
So you really see science and religion coming together in some kind of
science and spirituality for definitely. Yes, definitely.
And do you see that as a new synthesis, or do you think it's still to be fleshed out, or still to be kind of?
I think the basis of that synthesis is there already. The reductionist model doesn't work in ecology, it doesn't work in biology, it does not explain evolution. So everything that scientists have taken for granted is falling apart. Okay, so it's inevitable that, you know, that we are going to see a model emerge in science that takes into account what I'm calling non-locality, but others would call consciousness as the ground of existence. And once we start doing that across the board in science, it's going to change the way the world thinks. You know, science is also a mythology that creates the patterns of behavior in which we find ourselves, you know. So I look at human beings having gone through the hunter-gatherer age, then horticulture, and then agriculture, then industry, then information, and then entering a knowledge-based and ultimately a wisdom-based society. I think that's natural, the evolution. And by wisdom, I mean knowledge that actually looks at each of us as ecosystems within ecosystems, which is what we are, really. Even the DNA is nothing but an ecosystem.
Okay. One last question. If you have all the religious leaders, the influential people, the most influential people in the religions, in a room together, and you could speak to them in a way where they were really going to listen to you about where we need to go as we move in the future. What was the most important thing? What would you say?
If they're really influential religious leaders, they would tell their congregations, they would tell their flock that if anyone is intolerant towards anyone in another religion, they're not practicing their religion. You know, we're willing to believe that Christ got resurrected, that he healed people, that he brought them back from the dead, that he walked on water, but we don't follow even one precept of the Sermon on the Mount, which is the essence of Christ's teaching. So I would say to Christians, we have Christ consciousness. To Buddhists, you know, understand the awakening that he spoke of. These are great universal teachings. We've made schisms out of them.
Because you come from the Hindu tradition, I'll approach that. What do you see in terms of the Hindu tradition? Because I'm asking people, depending on what tradition they come in, how does the Hindu tradition have to move forward? What does it have to change to move forward?
The Hindu tradition, Hindus are interesting, paradoxical people. They're vegetarians, but they don't mind killing people. You know, I mean, you should have seen what happened in Ahmedabad. You know,
right, sure.
Scorching Muslims to death, and at the same time saying we believe in ahimsa and we won't hurt an animal, or you know, we're strict vegetarians. I think the Hindus have surmount the same problems that anybody else does. The rituals have corrupted the essence of teaching. They have surpassed the experiential knowledge that these great traditions had. Hinduism is based on Vedantic thought, or what we call Sanatana Dharma. And the Hinduism comes from the teachings of great rishis of the Upanishads, where you were encouraged to dialogue, encouraged to be skeptical and cynical, encouraged to have a open attitude, encouraged to self-inquiry. We've lost that. I mean, you know, I travel all over India. There are a few wonderful places you can go to and visit people of great knowledge, but by and large it's become ritualistic, and I fear the recent resurgence of Hindu fundamentalism, which is as bad as any other fundamentalism.